What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with another video, playing a little catch up after my week off, and I wanted to document a few mint on cards that sold, mainly later card backs, but I do have a couple of early ones. I got a few ESBs that sold for big money, and then some Return of the Jedi pallet toys and Power of the Force. So kind of spanning the gamut here, and you'll notice that there's a Rancor Keeper on this thumbnail. And you ask why Action Figure Grader is a Rancor Keeper of all things on the thumbnail. Usually I include the really big items. Well, this is a big item, and we're going to circle back to the last Hakes auction, or maybe 2 auctions ago, where a Rancor Keeper sold for stupid money. This one also sold for big money, so I wanted to kind of go over that. It's just hilarious that the Rancor Keeper is now like the new 12-back Luke Skywalker farm boy. I mean, if you find a clear blister Rancor Keeper, hang on to that one, because it's very, very pricey these days. All right, let's dig in. So we've got first a 12-back C AFA 80 Plus C3PO punched example with the Toys R Us price sticker, and you can see there the label 80, 85, 85. So this is a beauty, and this is a seller, 2 dips for me. That sells a lot of really nice high-end vintage Star Wars stuff. I've never bought from him, but always has really nice stuff. And this one sold in a buy it now situation for $16.50. $16.50 for an AFA 80 Plus 12-back C3PO. Seems pricey to me. Seems really pricey given that it was punched with that ugly orange price sticker. I'm thinking in an auction this would probably go $1,200 max. That's my personal opinion. It certainly is a beauty, though. Next up was a 12-back C Luke Farm Boy Taiwan Dark Pants. And this one did have 2 Kmart price stickers, and it was also a punched example. And it was an AFA 80, card 75, blister 85, figure 80. So there it is. And here's the back of the card there. A little bit of card wave, but not too bad. A little bit of scuffing right in here by the Star Wars display stand. But certainly a very nice Luke Farm Boy crystal clear blister. $21.25 in an auction. 36 bids on that one. That one closed on November 17th. But man, 12-back Luke's A, B, or C. It doesn't matter. They all go for big money. Here are those early ESBs that I had to talk about. They were pricey. They were both AFA 85s, Leia and Luke Bespin. So we'll start with the Leia Bespin, AFA 85, 31-back B. I think the 31A is her debut, technically, but you can call this the debut, too, if you want to. But crystal clear blister certainly was a beautiful example, but AFA 85. As a side note, I've heard recently from some folks that have submitted mint on cards to AFA that they've loosened up their grading a little bit. They've kind of heard collectors loud and clear that they're maybe being a little too tight. So take that for what you will, but, you know, I placed one, I graded one for a friend of mine, and I said it would probably be an 80 or an 80 plus. He sent it to AFA for grading, and it was like a 20-back or a 12-back Stormtrooper, and it came back an 85. And I've heard that from a couple of different subscribers that they've been coming in about a half a point. You know, if it's an 80 plus, it's an AFA 85. If it's an 80, it's an 80 plus, that kind of thing. So I don't know if that's true or not. It just seems to be the anecdotal evidence that AFA has maybe realized that they're a little bit too tight on the grading. But this one was an AFA 85. It certainly looks like an 85 to me. It was listed for $1,500. The best offer that was accepted was $1,300. But here was the shocker. This is the 31-back B. This is the Luke walking photo. This is the exact same one I just showed you that I added to my collection recently, courtesy of Rogue 5 Toys. Mine's only an AFA 80 with straight 80 subscores. This one was an 85, and it was a beauty. The weapons were still attached inside the blister. 80, 85, 85 were the subscores for an overall 85. So, and this one's punched just like mine. So, you know, I was kind of curious to see if this one would sell, and it did sell. It was listed for $2,500. The best offer that was accepted was $2,000. So I don't know where that places mine. I would think probably in the neighborhood of $1,500, somewhere in that ballpark, which is about where I expected it to be anyway. But $2,000 took home that punched example of the 31-back B walking photo, excuse me, of Luke Bespin. So big number there. Here was a Boba Fett on the 47-back free 4-LOM offer. This one did have a toy department sticker, price sticker, and it was a punched example with a little bit of wear around the hang tab. The blister looked crystal clear, factory sealed. It looked pretty immaculate, really. And it sold for $2,400 in a buy it now situation. Did not last long. Certainly looks every bit of an AFA 80. There was a little bit of scuffing right there by the sticker, and a little bit of wear around the hang tab, as I mentioned. But I think this one would get an 80 all day long. $2,400 again, took home that Boba Fett. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, this, you know, the figure, as is common for a lot of these ESB Boba Fett mint-on cards, the figure looks like it has started to degrade a little bit. That arm, both arms are kind of light relative to the legs and the torso there. So maybe it gets a 75 for the figure score, 85 for the blister, and an 80 for the card, for maybe an overall 80, somewhere in that ballpark. That's my guess as to what it would grade at. But $2,400 did take that one home. A couple of different Revenge of the Jedi 48 backs sold. This one is the 48C for the TIE Fighter palette, and it was a beauty. And, you know, the only unfortunate thing is that it did have some card curl. You can see the card is kind of bowed out there. And I've heard that AFA has a new case that also has a sliding edge on the bottom of the card to kind of straighten the card out inside the blister so it doesn't warp over time. I have not seen those yet, but I've seen a few from UKG, I believe, that have that feature. But that one was nice. It was pretty nice. It was an overall 80, and it sold for $487. And then the same seller also had the same card back for IG88, graded AFA 75. Clear blister on that one. And look, that card looks fairly straight. It did have some kind of litho wear right there in the upper right-hand corner from where probably a price sticker was removed. But this one presents better to me versus the TIE Fighter palette that has a big warp at the bottom of the card. But they both sold for about the same, $415 and $487 for the IG88 and the TIE Fighter palette, respectively. Here was a Revenge of the Jedi Dengar proof card, and this one was graded AFA 85 with an archival case. So that was a beauty, and it was at auction, so I was curious to see where it ended. It was right towards the end of the auction. It was hovering around $1,200, and then at the very end it jumped up, and it closed at $1,678, which is probably about right. I would have guessed $1,600 to $1,800. I think that that's a pretty fair price in the current market environment for an AFA 85 Dengar Revenge of the Jedi proof card. Here were a couple of Palatoys that sold. These were beauties. Here was a unpunched Neonum, and the blister on this one was pretty immaculate. I mean, it looked pretty much perfect to me. And Neonum is one of those sneaky ones that's hard to find on the Tri-Logo card bag. It's just very, very tough to find that one. I thought this was a pretty great price, 454 pounds, which is $572 US. I saw these in high grade sell last year for $800 to $900, believe it or not. So it's just one of those ones you wouldn't expect to be expensive, but on the Tri-Logo card back, Neonum is very, very pricey. There's not many of them out there. Next up, the same seller also had a very desirable pop-up R2-D2 lightsaber, last 17. This one was unpunched with that new figure pound 59 sticker that was applied in the Palatoy factory. And the blister on this one, again, was immaculate. It looked very, very nice. And it did sell for 1,150 pounds, which is about $1,450 US. So very pricey example there. But, you know, that seems to be about right. I remember one on Rogue 5 Toys that was kind of like in 75 grade condition at best. That sold for about $1,100 US. This one's probably an 80 plus grade would be my guess on this one, and accordingly it sold for a lot more. It sold for $1,450. Next up, let's talk about the Rancor Keeper, as I alluded to at the beginning of this video. So this one was an AFA 75 clear blister. So this one was the 77 back A punched example, and it was a true clear blister, and more on that in a second when we go back to the Hakes item. But you can see there very clearly that the blister had not yellowed. The inner tray does not appear to be yellowed either. And so, you know, it's very desirable, apparently, because they just are not easy to find. Here's the label on it. 75, 85, 80 were the subscores, and it's appropriately labeled a clear blister. So this one sold in an auction, and this seller in Gibraltar has sold a number of items recently, and a number of you have reached out and said, hey, I did receive my item, very well packed, very happy with it. So bid with confidence from Edgar 1972 over in Gibraltar. I've never bought from this seller, but I've heard from several of you that you've had good experiences. This one sold for 670 pounds, 845 US dollars on that one. So let's go back to the one that sold at Hakes. This one sold September 20th, 2023. And it was also a 77 back A, AFA 85, but it was labeled a clear blister. But, you know, Hakes appropriately said at the time of grading, the blister was clear, but has since yellowed with age. So if you pull up a photo of it, you can see very clearly that it's yellowed. So nobody's trying to pass off anything to anybody. Hakes was very clear in saying this has yellowed since grading. And you can see also that the case had a lot of scuffing on it. So the label is not correct anymore, right? This label is no longer valid. If you took it out and submitted it back to AFA, it would probably get the 85 again, but it would be yellowed. It would not be a clear blister. And it's still sold in an auction on Hakes for $3,848. It's still mind-blowing to me. I mean, we covered this in this Hakes session, but $3,800 for that one. That was an AFA 85. So admittedly a higher grade. The one that just sold was a 75. But this one is still clear blister. At least I think so. It looks very clear in the photos. You can see there it's a clear blister versus this one on Hakes that sold for, let's call that 5 times the money. And it was a yellow blister. So it's just hilarious to me that the Rancor Keeper of all things is very pricey in a clear blister. So if you got one in a clear blister, even if it's not perfect, it's probably worth getting it graded with AFA, because somebody's out there is going to pay big money for it, just based on this AFA 75 that sold for $845, and then this Hakes example that sold for $3,800. Next up is a 65 back Chewbacca, yellowed blister, 65B, AFA 85. 85, 85, 90 were the sub-scores on that one. Beautiful unpunched card, but it was heavily yellowed. That one sold in a buy it now situation for $675. That seems like a lot of money. I could see it maybe if this was the alternate image, the Rockstar Chewbacca versus the standard image, but $675 seems like a lot of money for that one. Even though it's high grade, I admit that, but it's pretty heavily yellowed. Next up was a beautiful crystal clear blister 77 back A Death Star droid, graded UKG 85%. 85, 85, 90 were the sub-scores. Look how beautiful that blister is. Very tough to get this one in a clear blister, but that one definitely was. It was listed for 900 pounds, and the best offer that was accepted was 750 pounds. So the seller came down quite a bit on that one, and that equates to a purchase price of $946 US, which is still a lot of money, don't get me wrong. But it's hard to find that one in a clear blister, and that one was definitely a stunner. Next up, we've got a made in Mexico Lily Letty squid head, which those tend to stay clear. As you can see there, it's a clear blister. And this one was in great condition. You can see there on the back of the card, down here in the lower right, it says made in Mexico. And it also does have that hole punch that was applied at the factory. Always look for those right around where it says Return of the Jedi on the back of the card backs on the bottom. But that one does have that factory hole. That's a factory applied punch. And the blisters do stay clear on most of the Lily Lettys. And that one was a steal, I thought. $109.50 on that one, plus $19 shipping. That one's probably about an 80 grade. It had one little ding right there on the left-hand side. A couple little curls there, here and there. But I think that was worth every penny of $130 or so. Very, very good deal there. A couple of 79 backs sold. First was a yellow blister Darth Vader. That one sold for 550 Australian dollars, which is 362 US dollars. We just talked about how even yellow blister Darth Vaders on the Return of the Jedi card back go for big money. But if it's a clear blister, it's even, you could probably double this price pretty easily. But that one did sell. It was a 79 back for 362 US dollars. And then this one I sent out to my Patreon supporters in a buy it now alert. It's a 79 back A Luke Jedi AFA 80, and it was listed for 500 US dollars. The best offer that was accepted on that one was $400. So $400 for an AFA 80 Luke Jedi unpunched example as well. Very lightly yellowed. I thought that was a steal of a deal. Congratulations to Norbert. He picked that one up. That was a really good buy, I thought, and a great deal on that one. Next up, we've got a Power of the Force Warwick. Very clean card and blister, unpunched. And I think this one would be an 80 plus all day long. That one sold for $370. Next up was a Manaman. It did have some Toys R Us price stickers in the lower right-hand corner on the card back. It had one little faint crease right there by the hang tab, but it was unpunched. One little blemish on the upper left-hand corner as well, but you can see very faint crease right there. That one sold in an auction for $395 US. That's about right to me. I think this one would probably score an 80. 75 for the card, 80 for the blister, or 85 for the blister, 85 for the figure. So I think that was a good buy there. Next up, and finally, we had one of those KB Toys overstock 2-packs. It seems more and more are getting listed right now. This one included the Han Solo in his trench coat, and then General Madine, and it appeared to be factory sealed. Obviously, a lot of wear to them, which is common for these KB Toys overstock 2-packs. They're almost always beat to hell. This one sold for $177.50. This is a pretty common combination. Han Trenchcoat and General Madine. The Gamorrean Guard is another one that's commonly inside these. Bib Fortuna is another one that very commonly comes inside these 2-packs. So they were just slapped inside the blister with no accessories most of the time, and then thrown into bins at KB Toys, and so that's why they get beat up all the time. But that one did sell for $177.50. So anyway, just some crazy prices out there. Some good deals. Some of the 31B ESBs sold for big money. And then, of course, that Rancor Keeper. The world may never know why people will pay that much for a clear blister Rancor Keeper, but that seems to be the trend. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.